Hi everyone, Stephen here. If you're confused about what IPS is and IDS is when we talk about VMware's NSX, stick around. We're going to talk about that now. We'll talk about what IDS is and IPS, and we'll look at how to configure it, and we'll see if we can generate some alerts. So stick around. Okay, thanks for sticking around. Let's jump right into it. So when we look at the NSX's security, platform, in there we got the distributed firewall, we have the gateway firewall, but in there we have this one section called the advanced threat prevention, and inside there we have IDS and IPS. Okay, so this is kind of part of NSX's security portfolio, let's say, right? So what is IDS and IPS just in general? Nothing specific to NSX. So first of all, IDS is intrusion detection system. So we detect possibly like a known vulnerability or a known exploit. The IPS portion is the prevention system. Oh, that's a known exploit that somebody's trying to take advantage of. I'm going to drop that traffic. That's the prevention part. Okay, so IDS IPS is basically the process of monitoring your traffic for these possible intrusions. So these bad guys, we know these bad guys basically try to take advantage of various vulnerabilities in applications or operating systems or whatever, right? So IDS IPS is the ability to detect that person is trying to take advantage of us, let's say, and then to prevent them from doing that. Okay, so that's kind of what IDS IPS is, right? Now, how do we detect these types of exploits? Well, there's two different ways. We can do signature based or we can go anomaly based. So signature basically, it says identifies matching patterns to match them with known signatures, right? So there's various exploits, various attempts to take advantage of these vulnerabilities. Well, there are signatures or hashes of these, right? So they're known to us, and we have signatures or hashes on this. The advantage of this is very fast, very reliable, so less false positives. It's very reliable. The downside of it is any day zero exploit. So if there's a new vulnerability that just came out, let's say an hour ago, well, these signatures can't help us out until we get the hash and figure out the signature. Sort of like a virus, right? A new virus comes out. Well, your antivirus software probably can't help you out until they figure that out, and then you update your antivirus software, sort of thing. So you can think of it like that. Now, what's anomaly based? There's different levels of anomaly based, but anomaly uses something like machine learning. It looks at your environment, analyzes the traffic, and says, hey, this is normal day-to-day type stuff. And then when it sees something that's a little bit off, it's not quite normal, it can flag and say, that doesn't look right to me. We better stop it or block it or whatever. So that's kind of cool. So the advantage of this is it's effective against any of these new type of exploits, right? Because, again, it knows your traffic patterns. It knows your traffic patterns, okay? The downside of this is potentially you could have more false positives, right? So, again, it's kind of a trade-off between them both. Now, what is VMware's IDS IPS, right? If you watched, actually, let me before I mention that, let me just kind of go through. So first of all, we do signature-based and behavioral-based, right? It says attempts to identify anomalous behavior. There's certain things that it actually looks for, like maybe too many SSH attempts to log in, that type of thing, right? It's available on hosts that have been prepared for NSX, so IDS IPS. Where do we get the signatures from? The signatures come from the VMware cloud. So the NSX manager needs internet access to download this. And VMware curates all these signatures from different sources like Lastline, TrustWave, and stuff like that. So it gets all these signatures, put them all together, and then your NSX manager can download those. Now, again, the NSX manager will check for new signatures once a day. If your NSX manager does not have internet access, you could set up a proxy for it. That's no problems. Or you could manually download the signatures, import them. But before you do that, you'll need to register your NSX manager with the VMware cloud service, so it knows that you have valid licenses and all that type of stuff, right? Now, if you watch the distributed firewall lecture I did, or YouTube video, this will make a little bit more sense. If you haven't, you may want to watch that. It'll help out quite a bit. I know the distributed firewall video is fairly long, but I do cover it in quite a bit of detail. So just like the NSX firewalls, we have a distributed firewall and a gateway firewall. The distributed firewall is east-west protection, and the gateway is north-south. Same kind of thing with the IDS IPS. We have the distributed IDS IPS, that's for east-west, lateral movements, and we have the gateway IDS, okay, and that's for north-south. So when I talk about the distributed IDS, this is really for lateral type movements, east-west. So, and we'll talk more about that as well. This is as modules are installed on prepared transport node. The distributed IDS IPS is really just the distributed firewall. It's a portion of that you're turning on. So when I talk about the distributed firewall, there's a filter that's installed on your virtual NICs of your VMs. Well, the IDS IPS is inside that filter. And again, you could view what's inside that filter by running the various commands from a host. And I demoed that in the distributed firewall. You may want to look at that afterwards. The advantage here, it eliminates IDS IPS hairpinning. I got a slide explaining that. It says co-locates the IPS IDS functionality with the distributed firewall. I said, yeah, it's built in. It's part of the distributed firewall, right? Distributed firewalls get processed first, then IDS IPS. Yeah, so again, if you're saying block port 80, well, they're not going to send that stuff over to IDS. It just blocks it, right? Now, the gateway, this is for north-south. This is only available in the Tier 1 gateways, okay? And it provides north-south protection, okay? So yeah, let's take a look at some of the slides here. Now, let's talk about some of the components. So first of all, we see here we have our NSX Manager over here. We have the NSX Threat Intelligent Cloud, so that's the VMware Cloud I was talking about. And you see these curated signature sets. So again, VMware collects all these signatures from different sources, curates them together, and the NSX Manager downloads these signatures, okay? Now, you'll see we got our management network here, and remember, we've got a management plane traffic and control plane. So I got that control plane in blue here and the management kind of in an orange or whatever, right? Now, if we look at the ESXi server, let's just zoom in on that. You'll see the vSIP module, the VMware Service Insertion Platform, and the distributed firewall. There's the filter. That's the firewall that's bolted on the NIC of all your VMs. You'll see that there's a DPI engine, right? That's a deep packet inspection engine. And then there is the IDS IPS engine right there. So it's all part of the distributed firewall. Configurations come in from the manager through the control plane. Notice port 1235. Okay? So again, when you're configuring, let's say, oh, I want to, with these signatures, you can monitor everything if you want to, but again, let's say you got a Linux box. Well, it doesn't make sense to be looking for Windows vulnerabilities on a Linux box. So maybe when you create these policies, which you'll demo, you'll say, well, it's a Linux box. I don't care about the Windows vulnerabilities. Let's not look at those, right? So again, when you create your policies and you say what signatures we're looking for, again, all that configuration goes down to the IDS IPS engine, okay? Then statistics, like for example, statistics would be like how often did that rule get hit? Okay, that comes back up through the management plane. Again, notice over here it's port 1234. Sorry, right? So that's the ESXi host. So that's the distributed IDS IPS. When we talk about our edge now, and I think I'm going to have to. There we go. I still got my picture in there. So when we talk about the edge, same kind of concept. So the edge over here, whether it's a bare metal or a VM, again, the policies get pushed down through control plane, again, over port 1235, goes through the NSX proxy and gets put into the IDS IPS engine. And again, same kind of thing as the as the ESXi host. Again, stats and events, like how often did that rule get hit or whatever, goes back up through management through port 1234. So that's what it is in a quick nutshell. So again, this all occurs over your management network that it's pushing stuff down, not over your data network, right? Yeah, I think that's about it. Now, when we talk about distributed IDS IPS, I've actually had some people saying, "Oh, I've actually seen somebody make a comment. Oh, I guess this will just be good for put on web servers, and that's it." Let's think about that one for a second, right? Let's say you got users in your organizations, right? And all of a sudden, they get an email saying they won $1 million from some prince, whatever, and then they got to click on a link. Bam! Now they get infected, right? So now the bad guys will try to do lateral movements from that point, right? So just dropping it onto your web servers may not be a good idea, may not be complete enough. We know most attacks occur within our environment today, right? Most attacks today are lateral movements. They want to get into your environment, be very quiet, not do any damage, right? And then do their lateral movement and not be noticed, right? Then whatever they're after, whether it's they want to, encrypt their database and then, bribe you for, Bitcoin or whatever, right? So it really depends. Now, in this example here, this talks about the distributed IDS. Why is it so good or so important? Well, let's say I got a VM over here, and let's say there's some kind of lateral movement that's going on. A bad guy managed to get into this VM somehow, or there's a user here, whatever the case may be, and they want to get over to this VM. Traditional IDS IPS is deployed out in your environment. So you may have some kind of physical device or appliance or devices or appliances in your environment. So again, the traffic would have to come out, hit your core, go hit that appliance, just like a traditional firewall, right? Then that appliance over there would say yes, it's safe or not, that type of thing, and then it can come back in and go to that machine. That's a hairpin. Okay, it's also called tromboning. Okay, with the distributed IDS, remember I said it's on the filter of the NIC of the VM. So when it comes in, when it hits that filter on the NIC, it says, "Oh, that's an exploit. That's an vulnerable." Boom, it drops it right there. It hasn't even hit the port of the virtual switch. Forget about the physical NIC and the host. Hasn't even hit the port of the virtual switch. So very efficient. But let's say, it is a traffic that's allowed. Again, we just come across like this, less hops. If the VM was on the same host, again, we don't even leave the host whatsoever. Okay, so this is the advantage of the distributed IDS IPS. Not saying get rid of your traditional appliances, but this can make things more efficient. Okay, and this is the advantage of the distributed IDS IPS. It's very efficient for east-west, that lateral movement that the bad guys seem to like to do. So use cases for distributed IDS. So east-west traffic now dominates north-south traffic in most environments. I've seen stuff like 80% or more. Modern day attackers now learn to move and attack laterally. Yeah, right? So they hit one point in your environment and then they maybe do a couple of hops to get to wherever they're going to do whatever bad stuff they want to do. East-west server-to-server traffic inspection is becoming increasingly critical, securing workloads in your enterprise. Traditional IDS IPS deployments are suboptimal. I just shown you that, right? Because it's causing hairpinning and bottlenecks. Deploying IDS IPS at each workload ensures coverage without blind spots. Again, it's all built into the distributed firewall. You just turn it on. That's it. You don't have to install any extra software. Okay. So that's it for the lecture component. Stick around for the demo. Okay. And by the way, if you haven't already done so, hit that subscribe button. All right. So I'll be right back with the demo. Hi, everybody. Thanks for sticking around. Let's jump right into the demo here, right? So what do you see here? Yeah, okay, I've got everything going. All right. So I'm on the home page here. I'm logged into my NSX Manager. I'm going to go into security. When you go into security, you'll see your security overview, and you can look at various other information here. I'll do videos on some of these other stuff later. But you have your monitoring over here for IDS IPS. When you click on this, and when I click on it, you're going to see some stuff here. When you click on it the first time, it's going to show you need to set it up. Okay. So I'm actually going to go into under policy management on my IDS IPS, and I'm going to go into settings over here. Okay. Now, if you need to set up a proxy to get the managers to the internet, you could do it here. You could activate standalone hosts if you want to. All right, if you've got that in your environment, or you can pick your clusters, which you probably got, right? So this is my vSphere cluster. I got Site A cluster here. I'm going to turn it on for that. And I'm going to say, yes, I want to turn that on. So I've now just turned on that capability on the cluster. You can then go in and enable it on your gateway. Now, I only got one tier 1 gateway here. If I want to do IDS IPS on this gateway, I would turn it on that. I don't want to, because if you know how to do it on the distributed one, it's pretty much the same thing on the gateway. So now that I've done that, let's go in and let's click on IDS IPS here, right? Under settings, you'll see it came up, says installation failed here. My NSX manager does not have outbound internet connection, right? So you'll see the current signature I have. It's a little outdated, but you know what? For this demo, it doesn't matter. You can upload signatures here if you don't have if your NSX manager does not have internet access. You can download the signatures from VMware's cloud, their threat prevention cloud, but you have to validate your NSX manager there so they know you got a valid license. Then you get access to download the signatures, right? Anyways, I don't really care. You see right now under auto update, I've got it turned off. You'll probably have it set to automatically go out every 24 hours and check and see if there's new signatures and download them. You'll see I've got over 10,000 signatures here. And then on advanced settings, oversubscription, bypass, or drop. What is oversubscription? If I click on these little information buttons are very valuable. It says configure whether excessive traffic should be dropped or bypass the IDS engine in case of oversubscription. If the CPU inside your host is oversubscribed doing other stuff, what do we do? Do we drop the IDS stuff, or do we just bypass it, right? I think drop would be better, to be honest with you. But anyways, that's me. But then over here, if you want to send these alerts, these IDS IPS alerts to syslog, you can actually turn that on, right? I'm not going to bother. I'm not doing it. Something like vRealize login site, you can send it there. Now let's look at view and manage signature sets. I can click on this. And if you've seen there's over 10,000 signatures there, right? And you see there's a whole whack load. Shows you the ID, the severity, critical, high. If I keep low severity, there's a whole bunch. It talks a little about the details, products affected. Again, if you scroll through here. Attack target, attack type, the common vulnerability scoring system, and the common vulnerability exposure, right? So this CVSS is a number from 0 to 10, 10 being... That's my dog. 1 second. Okay, everybody, sorry about that. There were some geese on my lawn. My dog heard them and he barked to scare them off. They like to poop all over the place. I live on a lake, so they like to come up on here. All right, sorry about that. Love live demos. Anyways, so let me go back into here. So as I mentioned, the common vulnerability scoring system, the common vulnerability exposures. Again, you can look up this number. You can Google this number up, and it'll tell you what the exposure is, like what product and stuff. And the scoring system here, 10 is really high, right? Again, there's different scoring. So 0 is like none, no threat. A 0.1 to 3.9 is low. A medium is 4.0 to 6.9. A high is 7.0 to 8.9. And critical is 9.0 to 10 type of thing, right? And it gives you kind of the attack type. Now notice over here, you'll see, let me scroll through here. The state that it's enabled, maybe you go, you know what, I don't care about this exploit, doesn't involve me. You can disable it, all right? I don't know if I would do that at the global signature management, because you can also do this in policies. And then notice over here, the action is reject. And you notice some of them alert. Alert just going to tell you about it. It's not going to drop it or anything like that. So this is where you're going to want to go in from the global perspective and say, what do I want to do on these vulnerabilities, right? So VMware's got like a lot of these being rejected. And let's see, you got alert, over here, this is low, so there's an alert. There's a critical one, is reject. So this is something you're going to want to kind of to go through and see what you want to do here, right? I'm going to cancel this. I'm just going to leave that. So now let's go into profiles. Again, it goes back to that distributed firewall. If your when we create our distributed firewall, you create a profile, then you put rules. Same kind of concept here. So let's go into profile. You'll see that there's a default profile there already created for you that you could use if you want. I'm going to create my own. I'm going to call it, I'm going to add my profile, give it a name that makes sense. I'll say Steve's IDS IPS, whatever. All right, you can give it a description if you want to. Now signatures, again, it's basically, it's got it from the global signature database, which I just showed you. And then maybe here you just want to monitor just for certain, maybe you don't care about suspicious. Suspicious is a new one since we started doing behavioral. When we see this kind of, hey, that doesn't look quite right traffic, it's flagged as suspicious, okay? So that's part of the behavioral portion. Maybe you don't care about those, you don't care about low. I'm going to leave them all selected. You could also specify the attack types and targets, the common vulnerability scoring system and products, so you can be very specific about that. You could also manage signatures for this profile. So again, maybe this profile is for a bunch of your web servers that are running on Linux, so maybe you don't care about Windows-based type vulnerabilities. So you can go through and say, okay, I don't care about these. I'll disable these ones if you wanted to, right? So that kind of thing. So you have a lot more granular control if you want to do that. For this demo, I don't care. I'm just going to leave it all turned on. Excuse me. All right. So there's my profile. I'm just going to say save it. There we go. Pretty straightforward. Now, whether you're doing gateway, IDS, IPS, or distributed, which I'm demoing in distributed, I'm going to go in distributed rules here, and I'm going to go in and add my policy, right? Very similar to the distributed firewall, we now have categories over here, emergency threat rules and threat rules. Emergency would be, again, probably, think of it like quarantine rules. Like those are like, I think of it like a hard line, very similar to the distributed firewall. So I'm just going to create one under threat rules here. I'm going to go add policy. I'm going to say my new policy here is IDS, IPS, policy, whatever. And here we go. Under settings here, again, I can, right now it says settings only apply to IDS, IPS. There's no stateful here, but locked. Locked, just like in the distributed firewall, is, let's say you've got a policy here with a bunch of rules and you want to make changes and you don't want other people making changes. I can lock it so other people can't make changes till I'm done, okay? And again, anybody with the NSX administrative privileges, the lock does not impact them whatsoever, so you can't be a bad employee and say, I'm going to lock everything and then quit, right? So I'm just going to leave this. Now, I just created my policy. I'm going to basically go into here. I'm going to say add a rule. Now, I'm just going to create a really basic one. I'm going to say IDS, IPS rule. You probably make something more specific depending on your workload. Now, sources, again, you're probably going to say any, right? I've got a test appliance that I'm going to be running here in a minute. So I'm actually going to go in and pick my group. I'm going to pick a group here. My, where is it? Oh, I got a group called IDS test. I'll explain what that one is. So that's just a group that I created that has 2 VMs in it. That's all. Okay. I'm going to say destination is that group as well. So these are my 2 VMs, and I'll show you that in a minute. Then services, you can be specific about services if you want, SSH, FTP, whatever. I'm going to pick my security profile here. Notice I'll click on that. There's my IDS IPS. Very similar interface to the distributed firewall. The applied to, I talked about this in the distributed firewall, so watch that video if you haven't seen it. But again, you can say apply this to all filters on all NICs. Probably not a good thing, okay? Or you maybe be specific. So I'm going to say I want to apply it just to this group, okay? I'm going to say apply, and then what do you want to do? Do you want to detect only, or do you want to detect and prevent? Now, remember when we looked at the signatures, some of them said detect and some said reject. So if you say detect and prevent, that rule also has to have that reject there as well, okay? So that signature has to have reject in order for it to work, okay? And then do you want to enable this or not, right? Now, I haven't published this yet. I can go into settings, very similar to the distributed firewall. Do you want to enable logging? Every time this gets hit, we log it, okay? Do you want, what direction? Is it going to be in or out or both? Again, what protocol, IP4, 6, or both? Oversubscription, inherit from global settings. Remember I talked about that? So you can say, okay, no, I want it to bypass or drop. So this gives you the ability to bypass or drop your based on your oversubscription, right? And again, the oversubscription is if the CPU is oversubscribed on your host and things are slowing down. Do we just bypass these IDS IPS rules, or do you block it? Okay. Log label, just like on the distributed firewall, allows you to add an entry, a custom entry to the log. So if this gets hit, this rule gets hit, it gets logged if you enabled logging up here. And then you can put in, whatever, this is Steve's rule, or whatever. You can put an entry there. And then comments, these are probably, comments, again, these are kind of important. A lot of times if you do something and you go, 6 months from now, you forget, why did I do this? So comments are there to help you do all that stuff. I'm just going to cancel this. I don't care about any of that stuff there. So I haven't done anything here. I'm going to hit the publish button on this. So I've actually now hit that. Okay, so I created my rules. This is for this group. Now let me show you the group here. So first of all, actually before I show you the group, let me go in my vSphere environment and let me start this up. There's an appliance that you can download off the internet. Again, I'll leave a link to a YouTube video on it. Okay, so a gentleman made this. It's the IDS replay appliance. There's actually 2 VMs in there. I'm going to turn this on while I'm talking. Let me power this on. And it's actually a really cool little way to do some testing and stuff, right? So there's actually 2 VMs inside this appliance, inside this VApp, I should say. There's the source. That's the bad actor. That's the one generating all the bad traffic. And here's the destination, like a web server and stuff like that this person made. These aren't too massive in size, but again, I just powered it on. Now, you'll notice it's turned on the appliance, the destination first, and then it waits 20 seconds and it turns on the source. And then once it comes up, if I go to the source here, if I launch, it's based on the Photon OS. Some of you might be familiar with that. Come on. We'll let it boot up a bit, right? And so it's based on the Photon OS. And what it will do once it comes up, it automatically starts attacking the destination. So you don't have to do anything; it just does it for you. Let me turn this on, so you actually see. There we go. All right. So it's doing some attacks on that. I'm going to leave that alone. So those are my 2 VMs. This is like a simulation. I guess I could have opened up my environment to the internet and wait for bad guys to hack it, but you know what? Not a good idea for me to do that. So let's go back to NSX, and I created 2 groups. Let's go back to inventory. I created a group, sorry. I go groups, and here's a group I created, IDS test, right? If I click on view members, you'll see there's those 2 VMs, those 2 appliances. So that's what I created my rule. I said source is these appliances. You'd probably say any source. Destination, again, is these appliances. I guess I could probably just said the destination, and then I applied it just to these appliances. Okay? So that was my little rule now. If I close this, if I go back into security, and if I go into IDS IPS over here, now, if this is the first time you're doing this, you may have to hit the refresh. You may want to wait a bit. Now, notice I got timeline set here, and then you can say, I want to see the stuff in the last 24 hours, 48, or all the way up to 14 days. I got the last 24 hours being showed here. What type of traffic do I want to look for? I want to look for all traffic, distributed IDS IPS, or gateway only, right? I'm going to say all, I don't care. And signature actions, what do I want to look for? I want to look for all signatures, whether it's dropped, rejected, or alert. Again, the drop or rejected or alert comes back from the signatures, the settings on it. Are you dropping, rejecting, or whatever? Okay. So you'll see here, if I hit refresh here, you may have noticed this one just popped up, right? So I can just mouse over this, and you can see Apache CouchDB remote control execution. I can click on that, and it comes over here, and it gives me an impact score, right? An impact score of 52. It's got a risk score of 75, a confidence score of 70. If I go over to here, it says an impact score is the combined value of a risk score and a confidence. So a high risk score means it's, pretty risky, right? A high confidence means, yeah, we're pretty sure that's a bad thing, okay? So a combination of both of those usually indicates a very high risk type of thing, okay? So this is kind of numbering they got. I can scroll down over here. You see the common vulnerability exploit. There's the number there. I can click on this. Let me click on that. and opens up, and it talks about this exploit. So that's kind of cool. Let me get rid of that. You can read that on your own. It shows me my the source, where it's coming from. So my test environment's from a VM here, right? But you also see the target it's going to. There's where it's getting exposed, right? And then you see the attack type. This one's not showing me a MITRE attack over here, but again, let me pick another one. Let's pick this red one here, critical. And we got over here. Come on. Yeah, you see the MITRE attack. If you're not familiar with MITRE attack framework, you can click on here. This is a command and control. If I click on this, it comes up and explains that command and control. The adversary is trying to communicate with compromised systems to control them, right? So you got this MITRE attack framework, and again, you can get a lot of that stuff at the attack.mitre.org. There's different. The framework is kind of the process these bad guys take to get to their end goal, right? And they've kind of broken it down with known vulnerabilities. Even, you can read more on this on their site, even known groups. There's actually groups of bad guys out there, right? I even heard that there's stuff like, bad guys as a service, right? So you can get these guys that basically, if you want to infiltrate something, you go out, you pay a subscription to the service, and they'll hack stuff for you, right? Which is crazy when you think about it. So that's kind of neat. It shows you a lot of information here. Right now I'm looking at the timeline. Maybe I just want to, I don't want to look at the timeline. I just want to kind of see what all the threats are. So over here, let me refresh this. There we go. And it kind of shows you all the different threats here, right? Okay. And again, you can click on each of these if you want to. I could, now, I basically, I can say show all, let me go back to timeline here. Timeline, you could actually look at the last 24 hours. I don't have 24 hours worth of stuff, but I could move my window around if I wanted to here, okay? So I'm not showing anything in this time frame, right? If I move things up, there we go, I'm getting some, all right? So this thing's constantly running in the background, right? I can say show all signatures. I'm going to say no. I'm going to say show drop and rejected only, and I'll apply that, right? I was actually doing some... right now, my rule says detect only. I was doing some tests before, and I said drop them, right? So it actually would start dropping them at that point, right? So so you could view that over here. And again, remember, this is going to be based on drop and reject based on your signatures. Okay, remember I talked about that. I'm just going to say show all and then apply. So that's basically it. Oh, one other thing, security overview. Again, you can click on IDS IPS here. I've had some stuff going on. It shows me I got 44 intrusion events, 19 intrusion signatures, critical. It kind of breaks things down. Shows me, again, the distribution of the attack types, targets, right? Severities. So it gives you pretty informative stuff here, right? An intrusion attempts, it's actually showing me the VMs over here with the 30 attempts. This VM tried 30 attempts, and this one here, over here had 14 attempts, right? So I got nothing on my gateway. I didn't set any of that stuff up. But again, this is just a quick little thing there. That's pretty much it. I hope this was informative. Again, I'll leave a link to that appliance. I think it's really cool to do testing and stuff like that. But that's it. Thanks very much for sticking around. Please hit that subscribe button. It helps me out massively, and it's free for you guys. If you found this entertaining or even a bit useful, hit that like button. Hit the thumbs up. Again, it helps the analytics, the YouTube analytics, to drive traffic towards my site. Stay tuned for some more videos. I'll be doing stuff on the NSX application appliance as well, and some more advanced security stuff. So thanks a lot. Have a great day. Bye now.